7 months pregnant, I stood outside the glowing glass windows of the baby store, my hands cradling the swell of my stomach. I had come here to buy a crib, something simple, something I could afford on my own salary as a receptionist. It was supposed to be a quiet morning. Just me, the baby, and the thought that maybe, just maybe, things would turn out fine despite everything. But fate is cruel. Because when I pushed open the door, the chime ringing overhead, the very last people I expected to see were right there in front of me. My ex-mother-in-law. And clinging to her arm, a woman with perfectly curled hair, manicured nails, and a glow of pride that stung my eyes. She was cradling her own belly, slightly smaller than mine, but obvious. She was pregnant too. For a second, the world tilted. My breath caught in my chest. My hands trembled as I instinctively pulled my coat around me, as if I could hide the life growing inside. They saw me instantly, and instead of the awkward silence I might have hoped for, my ex-mother-in-law's lips curved into a cold smile. "Well, if it isn't Emily," she said, loud enough for everyone in the aisle to hear. 7 months along and still shopping alone. Some women never learn, do they? The new daughter-in-law laughed softly, almost apologetically, but not really. She shifted her designer handbag higher on her shoulder and rested her hand on her stomach. "Oh, Mom, don't be cruel," she said sweetly, though her eyes scanned me from head to toe. "I mean, it's not her fault she couldn't keep a husband." Laughter. From her. From the woman who used to call me family, and from two strangers nearby who couldn't help but smirk at the spectacle. My face burned. My throat closed. Words formed and died before they could leave my lips. I wanted to scream that I had never cheated, that I had worked 2 jobs while their precious son gambled our savings away, that I had been loyal, loving, and patient until I had nothing left. But standing there with my swollen feet aching and my heart pounding, all I could do was swallow the humiliation as tears threatened to spill. I should have left. I should have turned around, walked out, and never looked back. But my body refused to move. Because then I noticed something. On my ex-mother-in-law's wrist, glittering beneath the fluorescent lights, was a bracelet. Not just any bracelet. The gold charm bracelet I had once treasured, a gift from my late father before he passed. I had lost it during the divorce chaos, and now, here it was. My heart stopped. How had she gotten it? Why was she wearing it as if it were hers? And why did the new daughter-in-law keep glancing at me with that strange, almost fearful flicker in her eyes, as if she knew something I didn't? Before I could ask, my ex-mother-in-law tilted her chin high and said, "You should go, Emily. This isn't your world anymore. My son has moved on. We all have, and soon so will the rest of this town." Her words sliced through me like glass. I forced myself to breathe, forced myself to stand upright, even as shame crushed my chest. And in that moment, I knew something undeniable. Whatever game they were playing, whatever secret they were keeping, it wasn't just about my failed marriage anymore. It was about something much darker. I stumbled out of the store, the bell jingling mockingly behind me. My legs felt like lead, my lungs refused to fill properly. I leaned against the brick wall outside, clutching my stomach, trying to calm the baby kicking wildly inside me, as if even he could sense my turmoil. Tears blurred my vision. My ex-mother-in-law's words echoed mercilessly, "This isn't your world anymore." I thought about how I had once called her Mom, how I had spent holidays cooking in her kitchen, cleaning up after family dinners, listening to her stories about tradition and loyalty, and now I was nothing but a stain to be wiped clean from her family's history. But that bracelet, my father's bracelet, burned in my memory. She should not have had it. She could not have had it. Unless a chill rippled through me. During the divorce, things had disappeared. Documents, jewelry, even savings from my personal account. My lawyer had brushed it off as messy paperwork and told me to move on, but deep down I had always suspected foul play. And now, seeing that bracelet on her wrist, I felt a sickening certainty. They had stolen from me. And worse, perhaps this new daughter-in-law knew. Her eyes, the way they flickered when she looked at me, almost apologetic, almost warning. It was as if she carried a truth she wasn't allowed to speak. I wiped my tears with the back of my hand, a spark of anger igniting inside me. For months, I had lived in silence, letting them paint me as the failure, the abandoned wife, the weak woman too pitiful to stand. But this wasn't just humiliation anymore. This was theft. Betrayal. A conspiracy that reached deeper than I had imagined. And standing there, with my unborn child pressing against my ribs as if reminding me he deserved better. I whispered to myself, they think they've won, but they don't know me anymore. I straightened my shoulders. For the first time in months, the tears dried before they could fall. Because one thing was certain. This was not the end of my story. This was only the beginning. I wasn't always this fragile, trembling woman who hid in her car after running into people she once called family. Once, I was just Emily Carter, a small-town girl with big, simple dreams. I grew up in a modest house at the edge of town, raised by a single father after my mom died when I was 10. My father wasn't rich, but he was proud. He worked double shifts as a mechanic and still found the energy to pack my lunch every morning. He'd tell me, Emily, the world won't hand you anything, but if you hold on to your dignity, you'll never be truly poor. When he passed away 5 years ago, it felt like the ground opened beneath me. All I had left of him was a gold charm bracelet he gave me on my 18th birthday. I wore it like armor, a reminder that even in loss, I was loved. Losing it during the divorce had shattered me in ways I never spoke about. That bracelet wasn't just jewelry. It was my father's hand still holding mine. Maybe that's why I clung so hard to my marriage, even when it was killing me. I met Daniel when I was 24. He was everything my small world wasn't. Confident, charming, the son of a well-respected businesswoman in town. He swept me off my feet in a matter of months. To my father, he was a little too polished, a little too careless with money, but he gave me attention I had never known before. I thought I'd finally found someone who would take care of me the way my dad once had. But love is blind. 2 years into our marriage, the cracks showed. Daniel gambled. He lied. He made promises he never kept. When bills piled up, I worked longer hours, sometimes late into the night, while he went out with friends. His mother, Margaret, defended him at every turn. He's a man, Emily, she'd say. Men make mistakes. A good wife forgives. I forgave, over and over, even when I found receipts from casinos, even when he disappeared for nights without explanation, even when I realized the money I saved for a nursery had vanished. But the final blow wasn't money, it was betrayal. One night, I came home early from work, exhausted and swollen with the first months of pregnancy, and found him laughing in the kitchen with another woman. A woman whose perfume lingered in my sheets weeks later. When I confronted him, he didn't deny it. He simply smirked and said, "You've let yourself go, Emily. What did you expect?" I left that night. Or maybe I should say, I was pushed out. His mother told me I was unfit to be a wife, and that Daniel deserved better. Within weeks, the divorce papers were in my hands, and by the time the judge signed them, I had lost not only my marriage but also the house, the car, and most of my savings. I walked away with nothing but a rented apartment, a receptionist job, and the life growing inside me. And I told myself that was enough, that the baby would give me purpose, that dignity could still be mine if I built a quiet, honest life. But seeing them today, Margaret flaunting my father's bracelet, the new wife with her smug glow, ripped open wounds I thought had scarred over. Because the truth was, I wasn't just abandoned, I was robbed. And as painful as that realization was, it also lit something in me. I remembered a conversation I overheard during the divorce hearings. Margaret whispering to Daniel about papers that needed to stay hidden. At the time, I thought it was just legal jargon, something I wouldn't understand. But now, with that bracelet on her wrist, I wondered, had they hidden more than papers? My stomach tightened, not from the baby's kicks, but from fear. What else had they taken from me? And why did it feel like the new wife knew? After that humiliating encounter at the baby store, I couldn't sleep for nights. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Margaret's smug smile and the glint of my father's bracelet on her wrist. It gnawed at me until I felt sick. I knew I couldn't just let it go, but I also knew I couldn't confront her blindly. Margaret was powerful in our town, respected, wealthy, the owner of one of the largest real estate firms around. She knew everyone, she had influence. And me? I was the ex-wife, the pregnant receptionist. No one would believe me if I accused her without proof. So I decided I needed to watch, to listen, to find cracks in her perfect image. That's how I ended up at the charity gala. Every spring, Margaret hosted a fundraising event for the local hospital. It was her stage, her way of showing the town she was a saint. I had attended in the past, back when I was still her daughter-in-law, pouring wine at tables, smiling for photos, pretending our family was whole. This year, I promised myself I wouldn't go. But when I saw the flyer at work, something in me snapped. I told myself it was curiosity. But deep down, it was more. It was hunger for answers. So on the night of the gala, I put on my only decent dress, the black one I had bought years ago for an anniversary dinner Daniel never showed up for. My belly stretched the fabric now, but I didn't care. I slipped on flats, painted my lips with the last bit of lipstick in the tube, and walked into that glittering ballroom as if I belonged there. The chandeliers sparkled. Waiters in crisp white shirts floated by with trays of champagne. Laughter filled the air, polished and fake. And at the center of it all, like a queen on her throne, was Margaret. She wore an emerald gown, her hair styled to perfection, and, yes, my father's bracelet on her wrist. She raised her glass as photographers snapped pictures, her new daughter-in-law by her side, glowing like a prize won in battle. My chest tightened. I should have turned around. But then, just as I considered leaving, I noticed something. A man in a dark suit approached Margaret, leaning in close. His voice was low, but I caught enough. "The documents," he said. "They're still in the safe, right?" Margaret stiffened, then quickly smiled as she noticed me nearby. Her voice turned sugary sweet, loud enough for others to hear. "Ah, Emily, what a surprise!" Dozens of eyes turned toward me. My stomach dropped. I wasn't ready to be noticed. I wasn't ready to be mocked again. But then something unexpected happened. The new wife, her name was Claire, I remembered, gave me a look. Not mocking this time. Not smug. But nervous. Almost pleading. She shifted closer to Margaret, whispering something in her ear, and Margaret's face hardened. I didn't know what they were hiding. But I knew, without a doubt, that bracelet and those documents were connected. And I knew this gala wasn't just a stage for Margaret to show off her wealth. It was a stage for me too. I forced a smile, lifted my chin, and said, "Good evening, Margaret. I see you're still wearing family heirlooms." Her eyes flickered, just for a second, but enough for me to know I had hit a nerve. And in that moment, I made a silent promise to myself. This wasn't about humiliation anymore. This was about justice. When people say betrayal feels like a knife in your back, they don't tell you it twists slowly. It doesn't strike just once. It cuts again and again, every time you think you've found solid ground. That night at the gala, Margaret's cold smile was enough to make me want to disappear. But the real wound came moments later, when Daniel himself walked through the ballroom doors. I hadn't seen him in months. My chest tightened at the sight of him. He looked almost exactly the same, tailored suit, hair slicked back, that confident smirk he wore like a mask. But his eyes? They weren't the same. They were sharper, harder. Like a man who believed he'd won. And then I noticed, his hand rested possessively on Claire's lower back as he guided her through the crowd. Claire, the new wife, pregnant, glowing, polished. A wave of nausea rolled through me. I wanted to believe she was just his rebound, a trophy his mother picked for him. But seeing them together, I realized the truth. He hadn't just moved on, he had replaced me. In every sense of the word. Margaret's voice cut through the noise. "Everyone," she said loudly, "this is my son Daniel and his wonderful wife Claire. They are expecting, and we are thrilled to welcome the next generation into our family." Applause, laughter, champagne glasses clinking. My legs nearly buckled. I wanted to scream, to shout the truth, that I was 7 months pregnant with his child. That while they paraded around with their perfect little family image, I was struggling alone, carrying his bloodline in silence. But then it hit me. That was their plan. If Margaret and Daniel could convince the world that Claire was the rightful wife, the rightful mother of his heir, then my child would be erased. My baby would have no claim to their family, no connection, no acknowledgement. And the bracelet, the stolen documents, maybe they weren't just theft. Maybe they were tools to make sure my child had nothing. I felt anger surge hot in my veins. I stepped forward, my voice shaking but loud enough to carry. "Congratulations. It must feel wonderful to start fresh, after discarding the old." Gasps echoed. Daniel froze, his smirk faltering for just a moment before he recovered. "Emily," he said smoothly, "you shouldn't be here." Margaret's hand tightened around his arm. Her eyes warned him to stay silent. But Claire? She looked at me, really looked at me, and for a split second I saw something in her gaze. Guilt, regret, maybe even fear. Before I could process it, Margaret spoke, her voice sharp as a blade. "Emily, you've embarrassed yourself enough. Haven't you learned? You are never fit for this family. And as for that child of yours—" She paused, her lips curling. "He will never carry our name." The room went silent. Every eye turned to me. For the second time in a week, I was humiliated in front of strangers. But this time, it wasn't just shame burning inside me. It was rage. I opened my mouth to fight back, but then I heard it, Claire whispering to Daniel, thinking no one else could hear. "The safe," she said. "If Emily ever finds out, we're finished." My blood ran cold. The safe. That was twice now I'd heard it mentioned. Once by the man in the dark suit, now by Claire. Whatever they were hiding, it was inside that safe. And suddenly, I knew. If I wanted justice, for myself, for my father, for my unborn child, then I needed to find out what was in that safe. Even if it destroyed me. I should have left the gala the moment Margaret told me I wasn't fit to be in their family. I should have spared myself the stares, the whispers, the judgmental eyes, but pride glued my feet to the marble floor. Pride, and something stronger, defiance. I lifted my chin and said, "That child you dismiss so easily is your grandchild, Margaret. Your blood, whether you like it or not." Gasps echoed across the ballroom. The music stuttered as the band faltered. Heads turned. Dozens of eyes locked on me, wide with curiosity, shock, or delight at the scandal unfolding. Daniel's face darkened. "Emily, enough," he snapped, but Margaret only smiled, a predator's smile. She raised her glass and addressed the crowd. Poor Emily, still clinging to delusions. "You see, ladies and gentlemen, my son's divorce was finalized nearly a year ago. Whatever situation she's in now has nothing to do with our family." Laughter rippled through the crowd. Not from everyone, but enough. I felt my stomach twist. "You're lying," I said, my voice cracking. "Daniel is the father, and you know it." For a moment, silence hung thick in the air. Then Margaret's eyes gleamed. She tilted her head toward Daniel. "Tell them, son. Tell them the truth." I turned to him, my heart pounding. Maybe, just maybe, some part of him still had humanity left. Maybe he'd admit it, acknowledge our child, spare me this humiliation. But Daniel looked me straight in the eyes, and with that same cold smirk he used the night he threw me out, he said, "Emily's always had a wild imagination. She was lonely. She needed comfort. But the child isn't mine." The words hit me like a fist to the gut. The crowd erupted. Whispers, gasps, a few cruel chuckles. Someone even muttered, "What a mess." My vision blurred. My knees weakened. I wanted to scream, to claw the smug smile off his face, but no sound came out. My throat burned. Choked with tears I refused to let fall. Margaret stepped forward, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "It's tragic, really, but sometimes women invent stories when they can't accept reality. We wish her well, of course, but she has no place here." Security appeared at the edge of the crowd. 2 men in black suits waiting for her signal, and with a simple flick of her wrist, they moved toward me. "Please escort her out," Margaret said sweetly. "She's disturbing our guests." The humiliation was complete. I felt hands on my arms, guiding me toward the doors as the crowd watched, whispering behind manicured hands. Some pitied me, others mocked me, but none came to my defense. Except, as I stumbled past, Claire reached out and brushed her fingers against mine. It was quick, subtle, hidden from Margaret and Daniel. But in that fleeting moment, she pressed something small and cold into my palm. I looked down as the guards pushed me toward the exit. It was a key. And scratched into the metal, barely visible under the dim light, were 2 words etched by hand, "The safe." My breath caught. Claire knew. Claire wanted me to find it. And suddenly, beneath the crushing humiliation, a new feeling flickered inside me. Not hope, not yet, but possibility. When the ballroom doors slammed shut behind me, the cool night air hit my face like a slap. But it wasn't refreshing, it was suffocating. I stood on the steps of the hotel, clutching my belly, fighting back tears that burned hot against my cheeks. The sound of laughter and music from inside echoed faintly, mocking me. That night, I walked home. I couldn't face calling a cab, couldn't bear the thought of a stranger seeing me in that state. The heels of my flats wore thin against the pavement. My swollen ankles screamed with every step, and the baby kicked relentlessly as if protesting the stress I was putting us through. By the time I reached my apartment, my body ached so badly I thought I'd collapse right there in the hallway. I sank to the floor once I closed the door behind me, my back pressed against the peeling paint, my chest heaving. I cried until there were no tears left. For days after, I couldn't get out of bed. I called in sick at work, lying to my boss about food poisoning. The truth was, I couldn't face the world. I couldn't face the whispers. News of the gala spread fast in our small town. People love a scandal more than they love the truth. I heard the neighbors through the thin walls. Did you hear? Daniel's ex claims she's pregnant with his baby. Can you believe the nerve? Nerve. That's what they thought I had. Not heartbreak, not truth, just nerve. My phone buzzed constantly with messages I couldn't bear to read. My best friend, Sarah, called again and again, but I let it ring. What could I say? That I had been paraded like a liar in front of the entire town? That the father of my child had denied him before he even took his first breath? I stared at the ceiling for hours, one hand on my belly, whispering apologies to the life inside me. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I should be stronger for you. But strength felt impossible. I ate little, sometimes just crackers. I drank water only when the dizziness became unbearable. My reflection in the mirror scared me. Hollow eyes, pale skin, lips cracked. I thought about my father a lot. About how he'd tell me I was stronger than this. About how he'd be ashamed to see me crumble. But grief twisted those thoughts into knives. If he were here, none of this would have happened. One night as I lay in the dark, I thought about ending it. Not my life. I couldn't. Not with my baby still inside me. But I thought about disappearing. Packing a bag, leaving town, starting somewhere new where no one knew my name. It was tempting. So tempting. But then my hand brushed against the nightstand. And there, where I had hidden it after the gala, was the key. The cold metal against my fingers jolted me back to life. The word etched into it, the safe, glimmered faintly under the streetlight streaming through my blinds. Claire had given it to me. Why? What was inside that safe? And why would she risk slipping me the key right under Margaret's nose? The questions buzzed louder than the shame, louder than the whispers. And for the first time in days I sat up. My body protested, aching, swollen, heavy, but my mind sharpened. If that safe held answers, maybe it held my salvation. I pressed the key to my lips, whispering, "For you, baby, for us." Because maybe disappearing wasn't the answer. Maybe fighting back was. The key burned a hole in my pocket for days. I carried it everywhere, at work, at home, even to bed, like a lifeline. But a key was only half the puzzle. A key without a lock was useless. I didn't even know where Margaret kept her safe. Until one morning, Sarah cornered me outside my building. She was my best friend since childhood and I had been avoiding her calls for weeks. But she was relentless. She showed up in person, holding 2 cups of coffee. "You look like hell," she said bluntly, pressing 1 cup into my hand. I almost laughed. That was Sarah. No sugarcoating. And maybe that's why, after days of silence, I finally opened my mouth. I told her everything, the gala, the humiliation, the key. Her eyes widened. "Emily, if that key says the safe, it has to be Margaret's." I remember Daniel bragging about her office, how she had this big mahogany desk and a safe built into the wall behind a painting. He used to think it made her look powerful. My pulse quickened. An office, a painting, a safe. That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind spun with possibilities. If Sarah was right, then Margaret's real estate office downtown might be the place. By morning, my decision was made. I waited until late evening, when the office building was nearly empty. My heart hammered as I slipped inside, my coat pulled tight around my belly. Every step down the carpeted hallway felt like walking a tightrope. If anyone saw me, I had no excuse. But luck, for once, was on my side. The office door was locked, but the key slid into the handle like it belonged there. I slipped inside, holding my breath. The room smelled of leather and polish. The massive desk sat like a throne in the center. Stacks of neat papers lined up as if staged for a photo. And above it hung a painting, an oil landscape of mountains. I limped toward it, my swollen feet dragging. My hands shook as I pushed the frame aside. And there it was, the safe. The key fit perfectly. The lock clicked. My heart nearly stopped. I pulled the heavy door open. Inside were stacks of folders, bound tightly with clips, labeled in neat handwriting, and on top of them all, a manila envelope with my name scrawled across it. Emily. My throat tightened. My fingers trembled as I tore it open. Inside were documents, dozens of them, bank statements, property deeds, legal papers. At first they looked like gibberish, but as I flipped through, the truth began to unravel. They had stolen everything from me. During the divorce, Margaret and Daniel hadn't just manipulated me emotionally. They had conspired, moving assets into hidden accounts, forging my signature on withdrawal slips, even transferring my father's small inheritance into their name. They hadn't simply left me with nothing by accident. They had planned it. Rage surged hot through my veins. But then I found something worse, a medical file. My name at the top, the date circled in red. Confused, I scanned the pages. It was a report from my first prenatal checkup. Only, it wasn't mine. Not really. The details were altered, my name but someone else's health information, someone else's pregnancy timeline, and stapled to it was another file. Claire's. My breath caught, my head spun. The dates. They didn't match. Claire's pregnancy was weeks behind mine, too far behind to be Daniel's if his story were true, which meant they were planning to switch identities. My child, my pregnancy, my medical records, they were trying to rewrite them as hers. The bracelet, the documents, the lies at the gala. It all clicked together in a sickening puzzle. They weren't just erasing me, they were erasing my baby. The room tilted. My knees buckled, and I clutched the desk for balance. My baby kicked hard, as if sensing my distress. I whispered to the empty room, "They want to steal you from me." Tears blurred my vision, but beneath them, fire burned. They thought I was weak. They thought humiliation would break me. But now I had proof, and proof was power. I shoved the documents back into the envelope, my pulse pounding. My hands shook, but my resolve had never been steadier. As I closed the safe, a faint sound behind me made my blood run cold. The office door clicked shut, and when I turned, someone was standing there in the shadows, watching me. The slam of the office door echoed like a gunshot. My heart nearly stopped. I froze, clutching the envelope of stolen documents against my chest. My mind spun. Security guard, Margaret, Daniel. If they caught me here, it was over. They could twist it, accuse me of breaking and entering, frame me as unstable. A figure stepped out of the shadows. "Emily," a voice whispered. I squinted through the dim light. My breath caught. It wasn't Margaret, it wasn't Daniel. It was Claire. For a moment, I thought I was hallucinating. She was supposed to be at home, playing the dutiful wife, not sneaking into this office in the middle of the night. But there she was, her face pale, her hands trembling. "What are you doing here?" I hissed. She glanced at the envelope in my hands. "You found it." I gripped it tighter. "Why? Why would you give me the key?" Her eyes shimmered with unshed tears. "Because you don't understand. They're planning something worse than you think." A chill crawled up my spine. Worse. They've already stolen from me, lied about me. They want to erase my child. She shook her head violently. Not erase, replace. The word hit me like ice. Claire stepped closer, her voice shaking. "They're planning to claim your baby as mine. Daniel knows he's not the father of my child. I made mistakes before him, but Margaret refuses to let the family name be tainted. She wants a legitimate heir. Yours. She wants to take your baby, pass it off as mine, and bury you under lies until no one remembers." The floor seemed to vanish beneath me. My knees buckled, and I leaned against the desk for support. "They can't." My voice broke. "They can't do that. It's insane." Claire's eyes burned with desperation. "You don't know Margaret. She controls everything. Judges, lawyers, doctors, everyone in her pocket. If she wants this to happen, it will happen. Unless we stop her. We." The word stung. I wanted to trust her. God, I wanted to believe that someone, anyone, was on my side. But how could I? She was Daniel's new wife, the woman who laughed when they mocked me in the store, the woman who stood by his side at the gala. "You expect me to believe you?" I spat. Her lips trembled. She reached into her coat and pulled out a photograph, handing it to me with shaking hands. I stared at it, and my blood ran cold. It was me. In the hospital, the day of my first prenatal checkup. Except I hadn't taken this photo. Someone else had. My name was scrawled in the corner, but the timestamp, months ago, was highlighted. "This is what they plan to use," Claire whispered. "They've been documenting you, following you. When the time comes, they'll make it look like you were unfit, that you abandoned your child, that I was the only stable option, and with the papers in that envelope, they'll make it legal." My chest heaved. I wanted to rip the photo apart, burn it, erase it from existence. But I couldn't. It was proof. Claire grabbed my arm, her nails digging into my skin. Emily, I can't do this alone. Margaret owns me too. She knows my secrets. If I fight her, she'll destroy me. But if you and I work together... I yanked my arm free. My head screamed trap. My heart screamed ally. The baby kicked hard, jolting me back to the moment. I looked at Claire, really looked at her, and for the first time I saw not a rival, not a thief, but a woman trapped in Margaret's web just like me. Still, my voice was hard when I spoke. If you're lying to me, I swear. I'm not, she cut in. Her voice cracked. Please, believe me, we don't have much time. The sound of footsteps echoed in the hall outside. Both our heads snapped toward the door. Claire's eyes widened in panic. Hide the papers now. I shoved the envelope under my coat, just as the door handle rattled. And when it swung open, Margaret's voice sliced through the silence. Well, she said, her smile colder than winter. What do we have here? When Margaret's icy voice sliced through the office that night, my blood turned to stone. I thought it was over, that she would call the police, twist the story, bury me once and for all. But Claire moved first. She snapped the safe shut, slid in front of me, and said, I just came to check tomorrow's files. Emily followed me here, uninvited. Margaret's eyes narrowed, suspicion glittering like knives. She studied us for a long moment, her smile never faltering. Then she simply said, How? Interesting. And walked away. Her heels clicked against the floor until the sound disappeared down the hall. I nearly collapsed, but Claire grabbed my shoulders. You have to move fast, she whispered. She suspects she won't wait long. That night I didn't sleep. Something inside me shifted. For months I had let humiliation define me. I let their cruelty make me smaller, weaker, invisible. But staring at the documents, the photos, the proof of their conspiracy, I realized something. I wasn't weak. They were terrified of me. Why else go to such lengths? Why else steal, forge, and manipulate, if not because they feared what I carried inside me, truth? The next morning I stood in front of the mirror and barely recognized myself. Hollow cheeks, red-rimmed eyes, a woman broken. No, not anymore. I pulled out my father's old box from the closet, the one thing I'd saved from the house. Inside was his work jacket, still smelling faintly of motor oil, and a note he had once written to me. Dignity is strength, Emily. Don't ever let anyone take it. I pressed the note against my chest. And then I made a promise. I would not let Margaret steal my child. I would not let Daniel rewrite my life. I would fight. The transformation wasn't sudden, but it was real. I started with myself. I booked an appointment at a small salon across town, far from gossiping eyes. The stylist trimmed my hair, shaped it, made me look less like a victim and more like a woman with fire left in her. I bought a second-hand maternity dress, not glamorous but clean, elegant, a statement. Then I went to Sarah. This time I didn't avoid her calls. I showed her the documents, the photo, the truth. Her face turned pale, then red with fury. Emily, this is enough to bury them. But you need more. Something public, undeniable. She was right. Paper could be twisted. Lawyers could spin lies. But if I exposed them where the whole town could see, they couldn't erase me. So we made a plan. Step 1. Secure the evidence. Sarah's cousin worked in IT. He scanned every document, every photo, every page. We made copies, digital and physical, stored in 3 different places. If Margaret tried to destroy one, the others would survive. Step 2. Prepare myself. I forced my body to eat, to rest, to regain enough strength to stand tall. My baby needed me strong. I whispered to him every night, we're almost there, just a little longer. Step 3. Find the right stage. Margaret thrived on appearances, galas, charity dinners, public spectacles, so it had to be one of those. Somewhere she couldn't silence me without witnesses. And fate, once cruel, handed me the perfect opportunity. The town's annual hospital fundraiser, bigger than the last gala. Media coverage, politicians, donors. Margaret was chairing it, of course. Her crowning glory. That would be the place. The night before the event, I laid out my dress, my documents, my resolve. My reflection in the mirror was still tired, still swollen, but my eyes were different. Harder, brighter, not a victim anymore. A mother, a fighter. When Sarah hugged me, she whispered, tomorrow you take back your life. I touched my stomach, feeling the steady kicks within. No, I said softly. Tomorrow we take back his. The night of the fundraiser, the ballroom glittered with chandeliers, the air thick with perfume and money. Cameras flashed as town officials, donors, and reporters filed in. Margaret stood at the center, glowing in a sapphire gown, Daniel at her side, Claire close behind, her hand resting delicately on her stomach. They looked untouchable. Untouchable, until I walked in. Gasps rippled through the room. Heads turned. Whispers buzzed like bees. I wore the black maternity dress, simple but sharp, my hair pulled back, my shoulders square. Sarah walked beside me, clutching a small folder. My pulse thundered in my ears, but my steps were steady. Margaret's smile faltered for the first time. "Emily," she said, voice dripping venom. "You're not welcome here." I lifted my chin. "I think the town deserves to hear me out, don't you?" The crowd leaned in, curious. The reporters' cameras swung toward me. Daniel sneered, "Don't make a fool of yourself again." But I didn't answer him. I pulled the envelope from Sarah's hands, my voice carrying clear across the room. For months, I've been painted as unstable, delusional, a liar. Tonight, I'm here to show you the truth. I held up the first set of documents. These are bank records, money stolen from my accounts, forged with my signature, transferred directly to Daniel and Margaret's holdings. Murmurs erupted. I dropped another set of papers on the table. Property deeds, my father's inheritance, signed away without my knowledge. Stolen, fraud. Margaret's face tightened, but I wasn't done. Finally, I held up the photo. My voice broke, but I forced it steady. "And this, proof that they planned to steal not just my money, but my child. They forged medical records, tracked me, prepared to replace me with Claire as the mother of my baby." Gasps exploded through the room. Reporters snapped photos furiously. Someone shouted, "Is this true?" Margaret stepped forward, her mask cracking. "Lies, all of it." She broke into my office. "Your office?" I cut her off. "Funny, because these documents were found in your safe, with your handwriting on the labels." A collective gasp. For the first time, Margaret faltered. Daniel surged forward, trying to grab the papers from my hands, but Sarah stepped in front of me, shielding me. "Don't touch her," she shouted. Reporters swarmed, officials whispered. And then, the voice I least expected spoke up. "Claire." She stepped forward, her face pale but resolute. "It's true," she said, her voice trembling. "Everything Emily said. Margaret forced me to go along. She told me if I didn't, she'd destroy me. She knew Daniel wasn't the father of my baby. She planned to use Emily's child to protect the family name." The room erupted into chaos. Margaret's face twisted with fury. She lunged toward Claire, hissing, "You stupid girl." But it was too late. The crowd had seen, heard, witnessed. Police officers moved in. Someone must have called them when I started speaking. They stepped forward, confiscating the documents, questioning Margaret and Daniel as the cameras flashed relentlessly. Margaret's empire crumbled in real time. I stood there, my belly heavy, my heart pounding, but my spine straighter than ever. For once I wasn't trembling. For once I wasn't invisible. I was heard. Daniel shouted, tried to twist the narrative, but the evidence was undeniable. Fraud, forgery, conspiracy. Margaret and Daniel were led away in handcuffs, their protests drowned out by the chaos of reporters shouting questions. And me? I stood tall in the center of it all. Sarah gripping my hand, Claire crying quietly beside me. For the first time in months, I felt air in my lungs. I felt free. The next weeks blurred. Police interviews, lawyers, headlines. But the outcome was clear. Margaret's assets frozen. Daniel facing charges. Their names dragged through the mud they once ruled over. And me? I kept my job, my apartment, but something had changed. People in town no longer whispered in pity or scorn. They looked at me with respect. Some even apologized. When my son was born weeks later, crying strong and loud, I held him against my chest and whispered, "You're safe, you're mine." Claire visited once, quietly. She looked tired, lost, but grateful. "Thank you," she whispered. I shook my head. "No, thank you, for giving me the key." Life wasn't magically perfect after that, but it was honest. And for me, for my son, that was enough. Because in the end, I hadn't just survived Margaret's cruelty, I had beaten it. And as I rocked my baby to sleep in the small nursery I had built with my own 2 hands, I realized something my father had always known: dignity is strength. And now, finally, I had both. It's strange how life can break you into pieces and still expect you to go on. For months, I thought I would never breathe without pain again. But here I am, rocking my baby boy in a quiet nursery, the soft hum of a lullaby filling the air, and for the first time in so long, I feel peace. The trial was brutal. Margaret fought until the very end, her lawyers clawing at every loophole, Daniel snarling through every deposition. But the truth stood taller than their lies. The evidence was overwhelming. Witnesses came forward, employees Margaret had bullied, people Daniel had cheated. One by one, the pillars of their empire crumbled. When the verdict came, fraud, conspiracy, theft, Margaret's mask shattered. She was sentenced, stripped of her wealth and power. Daniel wasn't spared either. The smug smile I once hated vanished as he was led away in handcuffs, a broken man. Justice had come. Not quickly, not easily, but it came. And I walked out of that courtroom not just with freedom, but with dignity. The same dignity my father taught me to hold on to, no matter what. Sarah stayed by my side through it all. The sister I never had. And Claire, she disappeared after the trial, starting her own quiet life far from this town. I don't know if I'll ever see her again, but I hope she finds peace. She wasn't innocent, but she was brave when it mattered. For that, I'll always be grateful. Now, my days are quieter, simple. I wake up to the soft cries of my son, feed him, hold him close. His eyes, so wide, so curious, remind me that the world, no matter how cruel, can also be beautiful. Sometimes, when the sun sets and the room is bathed in golden light, I whisper to him about his grandfather, about dignity, about strength, about love. I want him to grow up knowing that he comes from something good, something honest, something real. I don't know what the future holds, but I do know this: I am no longer afraid. Because I survived the worst, because I fought back, because my son will never grow up believing lies about who his mother is. I press a kiss to his forehead and whisper, "We made it, baby, we're free." And in that moment I know this isn't just an ending. It's a beginning. A new life. A new story. One I will write with courage, with truth, and with love.